Forbes Books presents Sustainable Leadership and Disruptive Growth with David Radlow. Transformation for a new and better world. Here's David.
Welcome back to my discussion with Dr. Miriam Nelson, the President and CEO of the Newman's Own Foundation. We've been talking about the amazing work and legacy of one of the greatest philanthropic organizations ever created. Miriam, this year Newman's Own celebrated its 40th anniversary, and in part one, you alluded to the fact that you're refocusing the mission on supporting organizations that help kids who face adversity. Can you break down on how you've become more laser focused on your three overarching operating goals: reaching more children, strengthening and empowering trustworthy, heroic, impactful organizations, and raising public awareness of important issues around children?
Yes. So when Paul Newman was alive, an extraordinary man, really extraordinary man, we know that he cared deeply about children. But his persona, he could just show up and make a difference, whether it was civil rights, whether it was equal pay for women, whether it was the environment or veterans. I mean, he showed up, he anteed up, he used his voice, and he could really make a difference. Since his passing in 2008, we supported hundreds and hundreds of different organizations, and we became a little bit more of a writing checks and supporting organizations, which was important. But when I came in 2020, I felt that we were not using our full power to create change. And so that's where we really did a deep dive and a deep look at our strategy and where we could have the most impact. And working with Dave Best, who's the president and CEO of the food company, the two of us work in partnership. I run the foundation and he runs the food company. We really wanted to think about where our authority was, where the relevance for our donors. Our donors are the people that buy our delicious salad dressing, eat our pasta sauce, have popcorn, salsa, our frozen pizzas. So we needed to really look at our donor base, which are the consumers that buy our food. And we saw that there was this wonderful confluence around children. And we knew that Paul cared deeply about children, starting the Hole in the Wall Gang Camp, and so we decided to really double down and 10x our work on children. And that we also knew that our consumer base, they cared deeply about children as well. So that is the sort of work that we've done to narrow our focus and be crystal clear that we support children who face adversity. And the way we want to do that is to amplify that work. And that's doing a podcast like this, or we did some work with Good Morning America this week, and really getting the word out there, using the back of PAC to elevate our grantee partners so that when they are looking at the back of a lemonade carton, they understand who we're supporting and where their dollars are going. And amplifying that, and then really trying to network and support our grantee partners beyond just check writing.
A big part of what you're doing is a phrase you really don't hear much about this. Occasionally, depending on where you're traveling, but nutrition security and nutrition insecurity. Can you tell me what that entails and how Newman's Own helps directly in that way?
Yes, thank you for asking that particular question. So nutrition security is a person is nutrition secure when they have access to affordable, nutritious, culturally relevant, and plentiful food. So it needs to be food that they're familiar with, that's culturally relevant to them. It needs to be affordable and accessible. So that's nutrition security. It's not just, elements like vitamins, minerals, protein. It's good, wholesome food. That's what nutrition security is all about, and it needs to be affordable and accessible. This is different than hunger relief, which is very, very important. There are times where people are truly hungry, or there are famines, or there's times when there's absolutely no food and you need hunger relief and you need food drops. There are plenty other organizations that are doing really important work for hunger relief. We're more looking at developing the long-term solutions to nutrition security so that everybody can be nutrition secure. And that's the work, especially that we're doing with Food Corps. It's really having a long view, a sustainable view around nutrition security. And schools are really that epicenter. So if we can work on nutrition education, skill sets, and really agency around understanding how to grow foods, procure foods, process foods, and enjoy foods. That's really what it's all about. And the AmeriCorps model that Food Corps is using, so it's really training a whole new workforce of young professionals in the food system. It's nutrition security is different than hunger relief.
So you're training people, and also you're heavily investing into community in that way. And would you mind just go into what type of training is necessary so that children eat healthy and are better? I mean, there's nothing worse than obviously a child that shows up to school and is starving and doesn't eat well, because obviously it will correlate to academic performance and the ability to pull themselves out of that. Now, how do you analyze all that? What do you suggest?
Well, there are multiple different ways, and what might work in Maine may be different than what works in Texas, which might be very different than what works in Anchorage, Alaska. So you need to make sure that you are tapping into the wisdom of the local communities. I'm going to talk about some work that we did in the city of Somerville in Massachusetts, which is a very diverse community. And this was through a project when I was at Tufts called Shape Up Somerville, just an extraordinary project where we learned so much. But when a lot of children when they have a very narrow, they may be food insecure, they might never have actually tasted delicious ripe cherry tomato, or they may never have had a red pepper, or they may never have had a wonderful green leafy vegetable. And the thing about nutrition is it's cultural, it's personal, and it is also really important for your growth and for your optimal learning. So when you integrate food and nutrition within the school system, and there's gardens that the children get to grow food and see how food is actually grown. Because think about it, so many children never ever get their hands dirty these days. They never get their hands in soil or their feet reaching soil. But when you actually grow a vegetable and then you taste it for the first time, you get to understand, wow, that tastes really good. And we know with children, especially elementary school children, it takes about 3 or 4 times to actually taste a food before they like a food. So there needs to be that exposure to different foods. And then when you start to add in things like, voting, what's your favorite vegetable? What's your favorite fruit? You start to prepare the foods. The children start to really embrace it and really enjoy it. And then when they understand that it promotes their own healthy living, it makes a big difference. And then when a teacher sees that the students are learning better, there's a positive and a virtuous cycle here. So, but it takes, teachers and school food service providers are working so hard these days. So that's where just having a little bit of a boost like a Food Corps and having a a food corps service member at a school can help to be that glue to connect all of the dots, and also help to think about local procurement of food into schools. And then all of a sudden you have a very different school environment and a nutrition and food environment within the schools, that where the food really tastes good and where the students are really embracing that. So it's a holistic approach to nutrition education and access to wholesome food within the school environment. And the other piece is that schools, they really, in the 60s and 70s, they went to much more of just a heating up foods. And then, these were the days when I was at school as well. And, the food doesn't taste quite as good. And then all of a sudden, when you get a little bit of fresh food in there, it's a whole different experience.
Thanks for that. The world of philanthropy, there's been a bit of demarcation line before Newman's Own and after Newman's Own. Can you talk about the impact of how your organization has reimagined the world of philanthropy, and also some of the partners you alluded to, that when you get involved, then all of a sudden you bring a bunch of others in, and when you bring a bunch of other things, the impact is so much greater?
Thanks for asking that. We're still a bit of a unicorn. I'm going to say that. We're still that sort of radically good food company that provides 100% of the profits to the foundation. Our governance structure is such that the way that Paul Newman set it up is that the foundation actually owns all the assets, which is very unusual. But Dave Best, it runs the food company, and he reports to his own board, and I report to the foundation board. What I see, there's a couple pieces to your question. The one thing that I've seen and that I get great pleasure in my job is that pretty much every month, at least every month, I have calls with family-owned businesses that are large. These are family-owned businesses, wholly owned by a family, and they're in the operating budgets of 200, 300 million, 500 million. And the company is doing well, and they're trying to think about their legacy. And so that's where our model is really uniquely situated, is that wholly owned family business where they are done really well, but they're thinking about that legacy. And I think that's where our model can work really well. But there are definitely many other models that can work well. And I'm particularly thrilled with B Corps and others, organizations that have designated a certain amount of profits, or it's interesting when we've done focus group work with consumers. Many consumers don't understand the difference. They don't see a difference between 3 to 5% of your profits given away and 100% of your profits. So that's a big change. So I think some of this is that we need consumers to understand the difference of being radically good and being, pretty good. So there's a real difference there. Did I answer your question? Is there a follow-up?
That's
to that?
correct. If you're bringing on, and I've worked with family organizations, and that if you're able to bring in some of these large people to multiply your dollar and your efforts into the programs that you're bringing on, obviously it's a big win, but it's a bigger win because they can help as well, and which is, if they give their 3, 5, 10, if you can bump them to 20%, it's all positive. So obviously it's not as good as you guys are, but it certainly can help your effort. And I was just wanted to see what you're saying, that other people's impact, say jumping on your train, so to speak, has been very, very helpful.
Yeah, I think that Paul Newman inspired many people, and his legacy continues to inspire organizations, companies, entrepreneurs to be radically good. And what I hope when I have three kids that are all in their 30s, and, in the dinner time discussion, I know that this generation really, they vote with their pocketbook. And I really hope that that generation really does think about using their power to support those businesses that are truly doing good, and that they themselves start businesses that are socially minded. One other thing that Paul Newman started, he started many things, but one organization was CECP, which is Chief Executives for Corporate Purpose. And this is a great organization, CECP, that supports businesses, Fortune 500 businesses, to think about their corporate social responsibility and think about it much more than just marketing, thinking about the vertical integration and the horizontal integration around the social aspects of their work, the environmental aspects of their work, the governance and the economic. And so that's really been another legacy of Paul Newman's. I mean, he really was an extraordinary man, and just did so, as he said, he shamelessly exploited goodness. And that's really what he was all about, and especially for kids who face adversity.
Paul once said, for Newman's own quality would always trump profit. If there was a profit, he'd always give it all away. And you're saying that the ethos and is true today and really has been expanded to a higher level.
When Dave Best and I were working on the repositioning the brand and really trying to elevate our purpose and how do we articulate our mission to the greater public, there were a couple of things that were absolute givens that were not going to change. One was that Paul Newman would be, the center of the brand. That's absolutely critical. The other is that we would continue the legacy to give it all away. And those were tenets that we were never, ever going to mess with. And I think that's what really differentiates us from everybody else. And that's our job. It's on us now to really get that word out there about how radically good we are.
Paul Newman, he passed away in 2008. Do you think Paul would find it funny that for a younger generation of people, he's known more for his lemonade, ice cream, salad dressing, and even pet food than being one of the biggest movie stars of all time?
I think he would be thrilled to be remembered as a person that did good in the world. That's what I think, and that he was radically good. And so we're working to tell his story so that people understand all that he did, and that he really he was a good person in his heart. So I like to think that he will continue to be remembered for all that he did and all that he stood up for.
He did say, when you see the right thing to do, you better just do it. And that's truer today than it was the first time he said it. Is that?
Yes, he really did show up and anteed up. And on one film that he did with Susan Sarandon, he found out that she was being paid less than him, and she was the female star of the show and he was the male star of the show. And he said, well, that's ridiculous. Cut my pay and make sure we're paid the same amount. Like, he just did the right thing. That's what he was all about. That's what we're really working to make sure, that when we look at the work that we do, when we think about the support for the social entrepreneurs that we're funding, they're just doing the right thing.
Miriam, what do you see as your legacy?
Oh, well, I don't know that I think about my legacy. I really am focused on Newman's Own and making sure that Paul's legacy is carried forward. That's really what matters to me, that we have a foundation that is having maximal impact for children who face adversity, that we fund it by a radically good food company that gives 100% of the profits away, If we can inspire others through that governance structure, through that work, to be more radically good, that would be a real win, and I'd be pretty thrilled.
Can you kindly offer anything that I missed you care to share, and where people can go to get more information of the great work that you're doing?
I really encourage people to go to newmanzone.org, which is the foundation website, which has a lot more information. Also, newmanzone.com, which is the food company. They're side-by-side websites. There's a lot of information about both sides of our business, the Radically Good Food Company and the Radically Good Foundation. Those are the places that I would really encourage people to visit, and then certainly follow us on social media would be wonderful. I'd also say, look up Paul Newman and all the good things that he did. He was a really interesting man. He wasn't a perfect man. He was human, but he did a lot of really good work throughout his life.
Dr. Miriam Nelson, the president and CEO of Newman's Own Foundation. Thank you so much for sharing with us, and we are all, I know, a lot more educated on foundations and Paul Newman, and it was greatly, greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, David. It was really a big pleasure to talk with you today. Thanks for doing this.
To connect with David, go to davidradlow.com. David's book set, The Principles of Cartel Disruption and Secret Stories of Leadership, Growth, and Innovation, are available wherever books are sold. This has been Sustainable Leadership and Disruptive Growth with David Radlow, a presentation of Forbes Books.